hello, we have to do something in SUP racing. And hello everybody, hey, we just have a new chapter opening in the organized SUP Sport and an interesting chapter opening in the organization of Wingfoiling. First of all, I'd like to thank you all preemptively and thank you for pushing that like button below in return for this video. There's a lot of work and hours go into a video like this, so as a thank you, help me with that video and click that like button. But anyways, let's jump right in. We had news here coming out early this week, actually late last week, about a new organization in Switzerland. And I found that interesting because for once we see the sport of SUP racing unifying under the Surfing Association and the Canoe Federation. How did that start? How did that fall into place? Well, the organizers of the Swiss SUP Tour retired as of the end of last year, and we're looking for somebody to fill that spot, to fill that void. Well, it took a while to find somebody, but now we have the news. The SUP Tour is to be continued, and it will be under the patronage of the Swiss Surfing Association and the Swiss Canoe Federation, building a new association calling SUP Swiss. Great way to go. Congratulations. I'm looking forward to get into the details there more and hear from one of the makers of the SUP Swiss and see what their thoughts are and how they progress with everything. So hopefully we can get a follow-up video on that. Another interesting thing occurred in Germany. And in Germany, we learned last week that the German Sailing Federation appointed the German Windsurfing Association to be the association or the governing body for wingfoiling. And that was pretty much like, wow, that's it. That's the clear structure right there. I haven't been able to talk to anybody involved there as close as I wanted to, but it appears to be that the structures there are very clearly set. It looks like that anything that is propelled by wind belongs automatically to the International Sailing Association. And we had that interview there with Jürgen Vogt from the Global Wingsport Association that laid out those structures pretty clear. And the Sailing Association and sailing in itself is a huge sport, Olympic as we all know, so they pretty much have a big say there as it appears. I, on the other hand, of course, would have been maybe thinking, well, you know, maybe not all windsurfers are automatically jumping on the wingfoil bandwagon, or maybe not every windfoiler is like, oh yeah, I'm also a windsurfer, or that's something like I would have expected personally that maybe there are countries out there or people out there that's like, hey, let's form something with our own sport and have the industry that is in wingfoiling support that and have our own body, and then get the patronage of a sailing association, for example, as clearly windsurfing is under sailing, kiteboarding is under sailing as well. So you could have like one umbrella organization with windsurfing, kiting, and wingfoiling, but evidently it's now windsurfing and then wingfoiling right there. So I found that interesting to see. I'm not sure if the last word there is spoken and what kind of predecessing or what kind of example that is setting for the rest of the world, because we know we have a global wing sport association. Those were the first ones coming out of the woodworks last year, and they're facilitating a tour in wing sports, and therefore are also in the talks with sailing. But the latest that we heard there from Jürgen, one of the co-founders of the GWA, clearly said that at that time sailing internationally was not all that interested in looking at wingfoiling as a sport that they want to govern. So it sounded like they were kind of saying like, yeah, why don't you guys just do? Not so much on a national level, where evidently the Sailing Association had an interest in appointing the Windsurfing Association, or maybe the Windsurfing Association had an interest to get appointed with the Sailing Association. That is something, things that happen behind the scenes. I wasn't told about anything, or I don't know about anything, but it's an interesting thing to see how we have still this tug of war. Switzerland, surfing and canoeing, they found each other. It's a much smaller country. I understand. Germany, it's still, I would say, SUP. We don't even want to get into the saga there. There are still the Surfing Association. They have, it's a bigger country too, so we have to put that into consideration. But we have different regions of the country with are more strong with the canoe. Other ones are, there's the canoe is not so strong, and then they have their federal Canoe Association that is broken down into the different regions, so it gets more fractured there. SUP's been trying to find its spot there for about as long as I have been broadcasting with the Stand Up magazine, and the German SUP Association is changing hands so and so often with new people and new interests, so we have never really seen that going forward in a straight line with a straight goal in hand. And that's the big discussion that they're now having in Germany, is about that, because now we see what's going on in Switzerland, and everybody's kind of like, hello, we have to do something in SUP racing. And that is something that I would almost say, like, I commend you guys, let's get these things structured. Same thing internationally. It's kind of been quiet. We haven't heard much from the ISA or the ICF. We know the ICF is going to have their World Championship there on the Balaton Lake in Eastern Europe. We haven't heard many other details other than the dates. We haven't heard much more about people, how to travel there, or what kind of how's the sign-up process, etc., etc. So it's been kind of quiet on the international level. We have the APP Tour is been kind of quiet as well on the international level. We see their posts on social media. We know their tour starts towards the second half of the year. Smart move, of course. Will we have an ISA SUP World Championship this year? I probably rather doubt it. So here you have it. That's the latest and greatest in this chapter. Feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think. What country are you involved with SUP or Wingfoiling, and how are local federations, associations and clubs organizing themselves to give SUP Wingfoiling a good structure moving forward. Thank you so much, and then we'll see you next week with more updates.